The evidence my business partner brought to court backfired spectacularly. The courtroom was dead silent as Marcus held up the USB drive like it was some kind of smoking gun. My former best friend and business partner actually had the audacity to smirk at me from across the aisle, his expensive lawyer nodding encouragingly beside him. "Your Honor," Marcus said, his voice dripping with fake sincerity, "this drive contains irrefutable evidence that my client's business partner has been systematically embezzling funds from Cloud Vault Technologies since March of this year." I felt my stomach drop. Cloud Vault was our baby, the project management software we'd built from nothing in my garage 3 years ago, fueled by ramen noodles and a naive belief that we'd be best friends forever. Now it was worth $3.2 million, and Marcus wanted me gone. Judge Chin adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Rodriguez, you may present your evidence." Rodriguez, that's Marcus's shark of an attorney who probably cost more per hour than most people make in a month, practically preened as he inserted the USB into the courtroom's display system. What you're about to see clearly demonstrates a pattern of financial misconduct by the defendant. The first file opened, a spreadsheet titled Sarah_financial_discrepancies.xlsx. My name is Sarah, by the way. Sarah Chin, no relation to the judge, unfortunately. I watched in growing horror as the document revealed what looked like systematic withdrawals from our business accounts totaling $847,000 over 6 months. Transfers to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Falsified expense reports with my digital signature. It was masterfully done, I had to give Marcus that. If I didn't know better, I'd think I was guilty too. As you can see, Rodriguez continued, clicking through screen after screen of manufactured evidence, MS. Chen has been siphoning money while simultaneously attempting to remove my client from day-to-day operations of the company he helped build. My lawyer, Janet Morrison, who I could barely afford but who came highly recommended, leaned over and whispered, "This looks bad, Sarah. Really bad." But something was bothering me. Marcus kept fidgeting in his seat, and he wouldn't make eye contact. The same tells he'd had back at Stanford when he'd cheat off my computer science homework. Plus, some of these account numbers looked familiar, but not in the way they should have. Furthermore, Rodriguez was saying, opening another folder on the drive, "We have documented evidence of Ms. Chen's communications with potential buyers, attempting to sell the company without Mr. Williams's knowledge or consent." The room felt like it was spinning. Forged emails appeared on screen showing me apparently negotiating with TechCorp Industries to buy Cloud Vault for $2.8 million, with plans to cut Marcus out entirely. The timestamp showed last Tuesday, the same day I'd been in Denver visiting my mom in the hospital. Marcus was going for the kill. This wasn't just about money anymore. He wanted to destroy me completely, probably ensuring I'd never work in tech again. 7 years of friendship, countless late nights building our dream together, and this was how it ended. Judge Chin frowned at the screen. "These are serious allegations, Mr. Rodriguez. Do you have additional documentation to support?" "Absolutely, Your Honor. There's more." Rodriguez clicked confidently into another folder. That's when Marcus's face went white as a sheet. The folder that opened wasn't labeled with my name. It was labeled backup_plans_contingency_m.williams_confidential. And suddenly, I understood exactly why he'd been fidgeting. The first file in Marcus's confidential folder opened automatically, and I watched his lawyer's confident expression crumble in real time. On the massive courtroom display, a spreadsheet titled embezzlement_schedule_2024.xlsx filled the screen, complete with Marcus's personal notes in the comment fields. March 15th, transfer $23,000 to Cayman account via routing manipulation. Sarah reviewing quarterly reports Thursday, avoid detection. April 2nd, another $31,000 moved. Document fabrication progressing well. Need better Sarah signature samples. May 18th, $45,000 transferred. Suspects something about missing client payments. Accelerate timeline for legal action. Judge Chen's eyebrows shot up. "Mr. Rodriguez, perhaps you'd like to explain what we're looking at here." Rodriguez was frantically clicking, trying to close the file, but the courtroom's ancient display system had frozen on the damning spreadsheet. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he jabbed at the keyboard. "Your Honor, there seems to be some technical difficulty." "I can see the screen perfectly fine, counselor." Judge Chen's voice carried the sharp edge of someone who just watched a lawyer implode his own case. "Please continue with your evidence." Marcus looked like he might vomit. His face had gone from white to green, and he was gripping the table so hard his knuckles matched his complexion. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Rodriguez managed to close the file, but his hands were shaking as he navigated back to the main folder. That's when we all saw the other files, forged_documents_templates, Sarah_frame_job_timeline, and my personal favorite, investor_communications_fake_copies. "Your Honor," my lawyer Janet said, suddenly finding her voice, "I'd like to request that the court examine all files on this drive, not just the ones Mr. Rodriguez selectively chose to present." "Absolutely not," Rodriguez sputtered. "Those files they're irrelevant to the case at hand." Judge Chin fixed him with a stare that could have melted steel. "Counselor, your client submitted this drive as evidence. Everything on it is now part of the court record. Unless you're withdrawing the evidence entirely." The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Marcus whispered something urgent to Rodriguez, who shook his head violently. I caught fragments, can't withdraw now. And, criminal liability. Finally, Rodriguez cleared his throat. We maintain that the relevant evidence clearly shows. Let me save us all some time." Janet stood up, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw her smile. "Your Honor, I'd like to call attention to the metadata on these files. Every single document allegedly showing my client's misconduct was created after 11 p.m. on weekdays, times when Mr. Williams had sole access to the Cloud Vault offices, as confirmed by our keycard logs." She was right. Marcus was a night owl who often worked late when I was home with my family. He'd had countless opportunities to create these fabricated documents. Furthermore, Janet continued, the offshore account referenced in these documents. It was opened on March 8 using Mr. Williams's personal information, which we can verify through banking records subpoenaed for this case. Marcus finally looked at me, and I saw something I'd never seen in his eyes before, pure desperation. This wasn't a confident, charming guy who'd convinced me to start a business with him. This was someone whose entire world was collapsing, and he knew it. Rodriguez made one last attempt. Your Honor, we request a recess to examine. Motion denied. Judge Chen's voice cut through the courtroom like a blade. Mr. Rodriguez, I suggest you and your client use the remainder of this session to consider your next steps very carefully. The trap Marcus had so carefully constructed was about to snap shut. On him. Rodriguez was sweating bullets now, but he wasn't going down without a fight. Your Honor, I move to exclude any files not specifically designated as evidence by my client. The defense is attempting to introduce materials that were never intended. Counselor, Judge Chen interrupted, her patience clearly exhausted. Your client submitted the entire contents of this drive. You don't get to cherry-pick which parts the court can examine after the fact. That's when Janet did something brilliant. She pulled out her laptop and connected it to the secondary display. Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to demonstrate something about the digital signatures on these allegedly fraudulent documents. Proceed, Ms. Morrison. Janet's fingers flew across the keyboard as she opened a forensic analysis program. Every digital signature has a unique cryptographic fingerprint tied to the signing device and timestamp. Watch what happens when I analyze the signature on this forged expense report claiming Ms. Chen authorized an $89,000 transfer. The analysis results populated on screen, and I watched Marcus physically recoil. The signature had been generated on his personal laptop, the same MacBook Pro I'd helped him pick out for his birthday last year. The signature was created using DocuSign access from IP address 192.168.1.47, Janet continued. According to CloudVault's IT logs, that's the IP address assigned to Mr. Williams' home office router. Rodriguez was frantically scribbling notes, probably trying to figure out how to spin this disaster. But it got worse for them. So much worse. Janet opened another file from Marcus's confidential folder, one labeled practice_signatures_sc.pdf. My stomach lurched as I saw page after page of my signature, traced and retraced in digital format. Some were clearly copied from legitimate documents I'd signed, others were obviously manipulated versions. At the bottom of the document was a note in Marcus's handwriting, version 23 looks most authentic. Used for March transactions. Jesus Christ, Marcus, I whispered, loud enough that several people in the gallery turned to look. I couldn't help myself. This wasn't just embezzlement anymore. This was systematic identity theft, forgery, and God knows what else. Judge Chen was studying the screen with the focus of a hawk examining prey. Mr. Rodriguez, I'm beginning to have serious concerns about the nature of your client's evidence and his potential criminal liability. That's when Marcus finally snapped. He shot up from his chair, ignoring Rodriguez's attempts to pull him back down. This is ridiculous. Sarah, you know me better than anyone. We built CloudVault together. Why would I destroy that? The audacity was breathtaking. Here he was, caught red-handed with a literal folder titled Sarah_frame_job_timeline, and he was still trying to play the victim. Sit down, Rodriguez hissed, but Marcus was beyond listening. I made one mistake, Marcus continued, his voice cracking. One goddamn mistake with the Peterson client payment, and instead of talking to me, Sarah started digging into everything. She was going to ruin both of us over $23,000. The courtroom went dead silent. Even Rodriguez had stopped trying to shut him up, probably realizing his client had just confessed to at least part of the embezzlement scheme. Mr. Williams, Judge Chen said slowly, I strongly advise you to consult with your attorney before making any further statements. But Marcus was spiraling now, the pressure of months of deception finally breaking him. She was supposed to trust me. We were supposed to be partners. I stared at him in complete disbelief. After everything, the forged documents, the fake investor communications, the systematic theft of nearly $1 million, he actually thought he was the wronged party here. That's when Janet pulled out what I can only describe as her nuclear option. She'd been quietly working on her laptop during Marcus's meltdown, and now she connected a second USB drive to the court system. Your Honor, 3 days ago we received a whistleblower package from someone inside CloudVault's accounting firm, Brennan and Associates. What you're about to see corroborates everything we've just discovered. Rodriguez looked like he'd been punched in the gut. Objection. This evidence wasn't disclosed during discovery. Because we received it after the discovery deadline, and opposing counsel's own evidence presentation has made it directly relevant, Janet shot back. These are the original, unaltered bank records that Mr. Williams apparently thought were destroyed. The new documents filled the screen, and I felt my first surge of hope in months. Clean, official bank statements showing the real timeline of transfers. But more importantly, they showed something Marcus clearly hadn't counted on, the bank's automatic screenshot feature for large wire transfers, which captured whoever authorized each transaction. There was Marcus's face, clear as day, authorizing a $67,000 transfer to that Cayman Islands account on April 15th. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m., well after business hours when he thought no one would notice. Furthermore, Janet continued, Mr. Williams made a critical error when he created his fabricated evidence. He used the wrong routing number for our primary business account in several forged documents. The number he used belongs to First National Bank. CloudVault has never had an account there. She paused, letting that sink in before delivering the knockout punch. However, Mr. Williams does have a personal account at First National. According to these records, he's been using a nearly identical routing number to redirect client payments to his own account since March 2nd. I watched Marcus physically deflate. The brilliant, manipulative scheme he'd constructed was unraveling thread by thread, and every revelation made him look more desperate and sloppy. That's impossible, he said weakly, but I could see in his eyes that he knew it was over. Rodriguez had given up trying to control the situation. He was furiously typing on his phone, probably messaging his law firm's crisis management team, or maybe just updating his malpractice insurance. Judge Chen turned to the court reporter. Please note that I'm ordering an immediate freeze on all accounts associated with this case pending criminal investigation. She fixed Marcus with a stare that could have cracked stone. Mr. Williams, you have the right to remain silent. I strongly suggest you exercise it. But Marcus wasn't done destroying himself. The Peterson money was supposed to be temporary, he blurted out. I was going to pay it back after the Henderson Industries deal closed. But then Sarah started asking questions about the client payments, and I panicked. The Henderson Industries deal. I remembered that, a potential $400,000 contract that had fallen through when their startup got acquired. Marcus had been devastated, claiming it would have solved all our cash flow problems. Apparently, it would have solved his theft problem too. Jesus, Marcus, I said, finally finding my voice. Henderson fell through in January. You've been stealing from us for 10 months. His face crumpled. The crypto investments were supposed to pay off. I was going to make Cloud Vault rich, Sarah. Richer than we ever imagined. But when Bitcoin crashed in February. And there it was. The real story behind the financial records I'd been puzzling over for months. Marcus hadn't just been embezzling to live some lavish lifestyle, he'd been gambling with company money on cryptocurrency, probably thinking he could play the market and return the funds before anyone noticed. Instead, he'd lost everything and decided to frame me for his own crimes. The courtroom felt like it was spinning as the full scope of his betrayal hit me. This wasn't just about money anymore. Marcus had been willing to send me to prison to cover up his own gambling addiction. Judge Chin called for a brief recess, and as the courtroom emptied, I sat there staring at Marcus across the aisle. He wouldn't look at me. Rodriguez was on his phone in hushed, urgent tones, probably trying to figure out how to minimize the criminal charges his client was about to face. Janet leaned over and whispered, Sarah, there's something else. The accounting firm sent more documents this morning. I didn't want to overwhelm the presentation, but... She pulled out a manila folder. Marcus wasn't working alone. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? Brennan and Associates flagged some irregularities in our quarterly filings going back 18 months. Someone inside their firm was helping Marcus manipulate the books. Look at this. She showed me an email thread between Marcus and someone named David Brennan, the senior partner at our accounting firm. The subject line read, quarterly adjustments, per our discussion. David, need to move the Henderson prepayment to Q2 instead of Q1 to smooth out the revenue recognition issues we discussed. Sarah's been asking about client payment timing. Brennan's response made my stomach turn, no problem. I'll adjust the accrual entries. She won't see anything unusual in the quarterly reports. Same arrangement as before. Same arrangement. Marcus had replied. Wire transfer details attached. I felt like I was going to be sick. How much was Marcus paying him? Based on these bank records. $50,000 over the past year. Small payments, probably structured to avoid detection. Janet flipped through more documents. But here's the really bad news, Brennan was apparently skimming from other clients too. The FBI raided their offices yesterday morning. The pieces were falling into place. Marcus hadn't just been stealing from Cloud Vault, he'd been part of a larger fraud scheme. Our trusted accounting firm, the one that handled our taxes and quarterly reports, had been actively helping him cover his tracks while embezzling from us and God knows how many other small businesses. There's more, Janet continued. Remember that mysterious investor meeting Marcus kept pushing for last month? The one with Meridian Capital? I nodded. Marcus had been insistent that we meet with them, claiming they were interested in a series of funding round worth $2 million. I'd been hesitant because something felt off about their initial contact. Meridian Capital doesn't exist. Marcus created the entire company, fake website, phony LinkedIn profiles, the works. He was planning to use the fake investor meeting to justify moving money around, probably to cover up more of his theft. The audacity was staggering. Marcus hadn't just been stealing our money, he'd been planning to use fictional investors to legitimize even more elaborate financial manipulation. When court resumed, Judge Chen looked grimmer than before. Before we continue, I need to inform all parties that this case is now subject to a federal criminal investigation. Mr. Rodriguez, I strongly recommend your client seek separate criminal counsel. Rodriguez nodded weakly. The man looked like he'd aged 5 years in the past hour. Your Honor, Janet stood up. In light of these revelations, we're prepared to present evidence of additional criminal conspiracy involving Cloud Vault's accounting firm and potentially other victims. Proceed, Ms. Morrison. As Janet began outlining the Brennan connection, I watched Marcus finally break down completely. His shoulders shook as the reality of federal charges, multiple victims, and a conspiracy that stretched far beyond our little startup finally hit him. This wasn't just about Cloud Vault anymore. Marcus had stumbled into something much bigger, and now we were all going to pay the price for his greed and desperation. The man I trusted with my life's work had destroyed everything we built together, and apparently taken several other small businesses down with him. The worst part came when Janet opened the final folder on Marcus's USB drive, one we'd somehow missed during all the chaos. It was labeled insurance_contingency_final.zip and contained what appeared to be a detailed plan to burn down our office building. I'm not kidding. Marcus had researched arson techniques, insurance claim procedures, and even scouted the building's fire suppression system. The documents were dated 2 weeks ago, right around the time I'd started asking serious questions about our missing client payments. Jesus Christ, Marcus, I whispered, but this time he heard me clearly across the courtroom. He looked up with red-rimmed eyes. It wasn't supposed to happen, Sarah. I deleted all those files months ago. They were just contingency planning. In case everything went wrong. Judge Chen's voice cut through the air like ice. Mr. Williams, are you telling this court that you plan to commit arson to cover up your embezzlement? Rodriguez practically dove across the table to clamp his hand over Marcus's mouth, but the damage was done. Your Honor, my client is clearly not in a proper mental state to. He seems lucid enough to me, counselor. Judge Chen turned to her clerk. Please contact the fire marshal immediately. I want this building's safety records reviewed, and I want federal marshals to secure the Cloud Vault offices until further notice. The gallery behind us erupted in whispers. I turned around and spotted 3 men in dark suits who'd been sitting quietly in the back row, FBI agents, I realized. They'd been here the whole time, probably working with Janet on the expanded investigation. One of them approached the bench and spoke quietly with Judge Chen. I caught fragments, federal task force. And 17 other businesses affected. 17 other businesses. Marcus's scheme with Brennan and Associates had apparently been massive. Small tech startups, local restaurants, a medical practice, all of them trusting their financial records to a firm that had been systematically robbing them blind. Your Honor, Janet said, we've just received confirmation from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. The Cayman Islands account contains approximately $3.2 million from multiple victims. Mr. Williams wasn't just embezzling from Cloud Vault, he was the bagman for an organized fraud ring. Marcus shot up again, his face pale as paper. That's not true. I didn't know about the other companies until Brennan told me last month. He said we were in too deep to stop. Rodriguez looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Your Honor, I need to withdraw as counsel. There's clearly a conflict of interest here that I wasn't aware of when. Motion denied, Mr. Rodriguez. You'll finish what you started. Judge Chen's tone suggested she was done with everyone's excuses. Mr. Williams, did David Brennan threaten you? Not threatened exactly, Marcus said miserably. But he showed me pictures of what happened to another client who tried to back out of their arrangement. Guy named Peterson owned a landscaping business in Riverside. My blood went cold. Marcus, what happened to Peterson? His office was burglarized. Computers stolen, files destroyed. Business records going back 5 years, just gone. Peterson couldn't prove what Brennan had been doing, and without the documentation, his insurance claim for the stolen money was denied. Another victim. I wondered how many more there were, how many small business owners had been destroyed by this conspiracy while I'd been worried about our quarterly reports looking slightly off. Furthermore, Marcus continued, apparently deciding to confess everything now that his world had collapsed. Brennan said if I didn't help him with the other clients, he'd make sure Cloud Vault got audited by the IRS. He had enough fabricated documents to make us look like we'd been evading taxes for years. So Marcus had been both perpetrator and victim, stealing from our company while being extorted by the accountant he'd initially partnered with. It didn't excuse what he'd done to me, but it explained the escalating desperation I'd seen in him over the past few months. Janet was frantically taking notes. Your Honor, this testimony suggests witness intimidation and potentially RICO violations. We request that Mr. Williams be taken into protective custody pending his cooperation with federal authorities. The FBI agents were already moving toward Marcus. As they approached, he looked at me one final time with something that might have been remorse. Sarah, I'm sorry. I never wanted it to go this far. I fucked up everything we built together. Then the handcuffs clicked shut, and my former best friend became a federal witness in what was apparently one of the largest small business fraud cases in California history. As the FBI agents led Marcus away, I felt like I was watching a stranger. The confident, charismatic guy who'd convinced me to risk everything on Cloud Vault had been replaced by someone I didn't recognize, hollow-eyed and broken, shuffling out of the courtroom in federal custody. But the nightmare wasn't over. Judge Chen called for another brief recess, and Janet immediately pulled me into the hallway. Sarah, we have a problem, she said, her voice tight with urgency. I just got off the phone with Cloud Vault's bank. Even with Marcus in custody, someone tried to access our main operating account 20 minutes ago. My stomach dropped. That's impossible. Marcus is the only other person with. It wasn't Marcus. The access attempt came from Brennan and Associates' offices, and according to the FBI, David Brennan disappeared yesterday before they could arrest him. He's in the wind with God knows how much money from other victims. I leaned against the courthouse wall, feeling dizzy. How much is left in our accounts? Janet checked her phone. The FBI froze everything as evidence, but before that happened, there was approximately $47,000 in operating funds. Barely enough to cover payroll for our 8 employees, let alone keep the business running during this investigation. 8 people who trusted me to build something stable, something legitimate. Jennifer from customer service, who just bought her first house. Miguel from development, whose wife was pregnant with their second child. All of them now facing unemployment because my best friend had decided to play casino with our company's future. There's something else, Janet continued. The Peterson landscaping business Marcus mentioned. Thomas Peterson committed suicide 6 months after Brennan destroyed his records. Left behind a wife and 2 kids. The words hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about money anymore. Brennan's fraud ring had literally destroyed lives, and Marcus had been complicit in all of it. How many others? I asked. The FBI won't give me exact numbers, but Agent Morrison, no relation, said they're tracking at least 37 affected businesses across Southern California. Total loss is estimated at over $15 million. $15 million. My head spun trying to process the scope of it. Marcus hadn't just betrayed me personally, he'd been part of something that had devastated dozens of families and small businesses. When we returned to the courtroom, Agent Morrison was conferring with Judge Chen. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with the kind of focused intensity that made you believe he actually gave a damn about justice. Your Honor, he said, addressing the court, we've discovered additional evidence that directly impacts this case. Mr. Williams wasn't just a co-conspirator with David Brennan, he was being groomed as Brennan's replacement. Janet and I exchanged glances. What does that mean? I whispered. Agent Morrison opened his laptop and connected it to the display system. 3 days ago, we intercepted communications between Brennan and Marcus discussing something called Phase 2. The plan was for Marcus to take over Brennan's client portfolio while Brennan relocated overseas with the accumulated funds. A new document appeared on screen, an encrypted chat log between Marcus and Brennan from last Tuesday, the same day I'd been visiting my mom in Denver. Brennan_47, timeline moved up. Federal heat getting too intense. Need you ready to take over West Coast operations by month end. Williams_CLD, what about Sarah? She's getting suspicious about the quarterly reports. Brennan_47, that's what the legal action is for. Once she's discredited and potentially imprisoned, you'll have full control of Cloud Vault. Perfect front company for the new client acquisitions. Williams_CLD, I don't know if I can go through with destroying her reputation. We've been friends since college. Brennan_47, remember what happened to Peterson when he got cold feet. Some prices are non-negotiable. I felt physically ill reading Marcus's next response, understood. Frame job proceeds as planned. Sarah goes down Friday. Friday. Today was Friday. Marcus had been planning my complete destruction for over a week, probably lying to my face during our staff meeting on Monday when he'd seemed concerned about our cash flow problems. Furthermore, Agent Morrison continued, we've identified the next phase of their operation. Brennan had been systematically targeting tech startups in a $2 to $5 million revenue range, companies like CloudVault that were successful enough to have significant cash reserves, but small enough to lack sophisticated financial oversight. He clicked to another document showing a spreadsheet titled target_acquisition_Q3_2024.xlsx. I recognized several company names: Startup Flow in San Diego, DataBridge Solutions in Orange County, even Technova, our biggest competitor. The plan was to recruit business partners like Mr. Williams from each target company, then systematically drain their resources while building legal cases to eliminate the non-complicit founders. A hostile takeover disguised as embezzlement cases. Judge Chin shook her head in disgust. Agent Morrison, are you telling me this was essentially a criminal franchise operation? That's exactly what we're looking at, Your Honor. Brennan was building a network of corrupted business partners across Southern California, each one following the same playbook Marcus used against Ms. Chin. The scope of the betrayal was staggering. This wasn't just about my friendship with Marcus or even CloudVault's survival. We'd stumbled into exposing a systematic attack on the entire startup ecosystem that had made California's tech industry possible. And somewhere out there, David Brennan was probably setting up shop in a non-extradition country, ready to do it all over again with a new crop of victims. Agent Morrison pulled up another document that made my blood run cold. Ms. Chen, we found something else in Brennan's files that directly concerns you. Your personal information, social security number, banking details, even your mother's medical records from Denver General. What? I gripped the table edge. How could he possibly have? Marcus provided it, Agent Morrison said grimly. According to these communications, Brennan was building a complete identity theft package. If the legal frame-up had failed, they were planning to destroy your credit, file fraudulent tax returns in your name, and even take out business loans using your identity. Janet was furiously scribbling notes. Your Honor, this demonstrates premeditation far beyond simple embezzlement. They were planning to systematically destroy Ms. Chen's entire life. The chat logs on screen showed Marcus sending my personal information piece by piece over the past 2 months. My mother's insurance details from when I'd helped her with paperwork. Photos of my driver's license that he'd taken when we'd gone to that conference in Vegas. Even my childhood address from college applications he'd somehow kept. Williams_CLD, sent Sarah's banking info. She uses the same password for everything, her cat's name plus her birth year. Brennan_47, perfect. Phase 3 contingency is ready if the court case doesn't eliminate her completely. I felt violated in a way that went beyond financial theft. Marcus had been cataloging my entire existence, turning 7 years of friendship into weapons against me. Every personal detail I'd shared, every moment of trust, had been carefully archived for my destruction. There's more, Agent Morrison continued. We've been monitoring Brennan's known associates, and yesterday we intercepted a communication with someone at TechCorp Industries, the same company mentioned in those fake buyout negotiations Marcus fabricated. My heart sank. TechCorp was legitimate, a major player in our industry that actually had approached us about partnership discussions last year. If Brennan had contacts there, it meant the conspiracy reached into established corporations. The contact is a mid-level executive named Richard Walsh in their acquisitions department. Based on phone intercepts, Walsh has been feeding Brennan inside information about which companies TechCorp was planning to acquire or partner with. Brennan would then target those businesses before the deals could close. Judge Chen leaned forward. Are you saying TechCorp Industries is involved in this conspiracy? Not the company itself, Your Honor. Walsh appears to have been working independently, probably for a cut of the profits. But his information allowed Brennan to time his attacks perfectly, hitting companies right before they received major funding or partnership deals that would have made them financially secure. The screen showed a list of companies that TechCorp had planned to acquire over the past 18 months. Next to each name was a date marked, Brennan action initiated. The pattern was unmistakable, every single company had been targeted by the fraud ring within weeks of TechCorp's internal acquisition discussions. CloudVault was on Walsh's list for December, Agent Morrison said. TechCorp had apparently been planning to offer you a $4.2 million buyout after your Q4 earnings report. $4.2 million. Life-changing money that Marcus had known about and deliberately sabotaged. Instead of being patient and letting the legitimate deal proceed, he'd chosen to steal what he could and destroy the rest. Furthermore, we believe Walsh was being blackmailed. Brennan discovered that Walsh had been embezzling from TechCorp's acquisition fund, small amounts, probably to cover gambling debts. Instead of exposing him, Brennan recruited him as an informant. Janet stood up. Your Honor, this evidence demonstrates that Ms. Chen and CloudVault were victims of a coordinated attack by an organized criminal enterprise. The damages go far beyond the $847,000 originally claimed, they include the destruction of a $4.2 million business opportunity. The math was staggering. Between the stolen money, the lost TechCorp deal, legal fees, and the cost of rebuilding our shattered business operations, Marcus's betrayal had cost us nearly $5 million. And that was just CloudVault, multiply that across 37 other businesses, and Brennan's fraud ring had caused unprecedented damage to California's small business sector. Agent Morrison closed his laptop. Your Honor, the FBI is prepared to offer Ms. Chen full restitution from recovered assets, plus witness protection if necessary. Mr. Williams's cooperation will be essential to locating David Brennan and dismantling the rest of this network. As the weight of everything settled over me, I realized that Marcus's USB drive hadn't just backfired, it had accidentally exposed one of the largest business fraud conspiracies in state history. His greed and desperation had brought down an entire criminal enterprise. But somehow, that didn't make the personal betrayal hurt any less. The courtroom was buzzing with activity as FBI agents set up additional equipment, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were still missing something crucial. Agent Morrison kept checking his phone with increasing urgency, and Janet had that look she got when she was piecing together a puzzle. Your Honor, Agent Morrison said, returning to the podium, we've just received critical intelligence from our Sacramento field office. David Brennan didn't disappear yesterday, he's been running this operation from Mexico for the past 6 weeks. My stomach dropped. What does that mean for the other victims? It means Phase 2 was already in motion. Agent Morrison pulled up a new document that made the room go dead silent. We intercepted communications between Brennan and 3 other Marcus Williams-type operatives in San Diego, Orange County, and Silicon Valley. All of them filed lawsuits against their business partners yesterday. The screen showed a coordination timeline that was terrifyingly precise. Friday, October 18th, Los Angeles, Williams vs. Chen, CloudVault Technologies. Friday, October 18th, San Diego, Rodriguez v. Martinez, Startup Flow. Friday, October 18th, Orange County, Thompson vs. Kim, Databridge Solutions. Friday, October 18th, Palo Alto, Chen vs. Foster, Neuralink Dynamics. 4 simultaneous legal attacks, all following the exact same playbook Marcus had used against me. For more entrepreneurs sitting in courtrooms right now, watching their life's work get systematically destroyed by people they trusted. Agent Morrison, Judge Chen said, her voice tight with controlled anger, are you telling me we're dealing with coordinated legal terrorism? That's exactly what this is, Your Honor. Brennan realized that individual embezzlement cases drew too much attention, but if he could orchestrate multiple lawsuits simultaneously across different jurisdictions, it would overwhelm law enforcement response and give him time to disappear with the accumulated funds. Janet was already on her phone, probably coordinating with the other victims' legal teams. Your Honor, we need to contact those other courts immediately. If their cases are following Marcus's timeline, those defendants are about to face the same fabricated evidence presentations. The irony was devastating. Marcus's incompetence in accidentally including his incriminating files might have been the only thing that prevented 3 other innocent people from being framed and imprisoned. Agent Morrison continued clicking through documents. The total target value across all 4 companies was approximately $18.7 million. Combined with the funds already stolen from previous victims, Brennan's operation was positioned to net over $25 million. $25 million. The number was so large it felt abstract, but I kept thinking about Thomas Peterson and the other business owners whose lives had been destroyed. How many more families would have been devastated if Marcus hadn't made his critical mistake? There's something else, Agent Morrison said, his expression growing darker. We found communications suggesting that Brennan has been recruiting new operatives for expansion into Texas and Florida. The model was working so well in California that he was planning to franchise it nationally. Judge Chen shook her head in disgust. A criminal business model targeting the entrepreneurial ecosystem that drives our economy. Furthermore, we discovered that Richard Walsh at TechCorp wasn't Brennan's only corporate contact. He had inside sources at Meridian Ventures, Coastal Capital, and at least 3 other major investment firms. They were feeding him intelligence about which startups were about to receive funding rounds. The scope kept expanding. This wasn't just about corrupt accountants and manipulated business partners. Brennan had built a network of informants throughout the entire venture capital ecosystem. Every funding announcement, every acquisition rumor, every piece of inside information was being weaponized against small business owners. The timing wasn't coincidental, Agent Morrison explained. Brennan would target companies right before they were about to become financially secure, maximizing both the available cash reserves and the personal devastation to the founders. I thought about our own timeline. Marcus had initiated his theft in March, just 2 months before TechCorp's acquisition team had apparently begun their internal discussions about CloudVault. The psychological warfare was as calculated as the financial theft, hitting us at the moment when success was within reach. Agent Morrison, I said, finding my voice, what happens to the other companies being targeted today? Can we stop those lawsuits? We're coordinating with federal prosecutors in each jurisdiction. The evidence from Marcus's USB drive is being shared in real time with the other defense teams. He paused, checking another message on his phone. Actually, we just got word that the San Diego case has been suspended pending federal investigation. The defendant's attorney recognized the pattern similarities and requested an emergency review. 1 down, 2 to go. I felt a surge of hope that maybe Marcus's spectacular failure could save others from the nightmare I'd been living through. But Agent Morrison's next words reminded me that our own ordeal was far from over. Ms. Chen, there's one more thing you need to know. Brennan's communications suggest that Marcus wasn't supposed to present that USB drive today. The plan was for him to win the case using only the fabricated financial documents, then gradually introduce the fake investor communications over the next few weeks to justify a complete buyout of your shares. The USB drive with all the incriminating evidence was never meant to see daylight. Marcus had brought the wrong drive to court, probably grabbed it in a panic when his lawyer demanded last-minute documentation. His downfall hadn't been arrogance or carelessness. It had been simple, catastrophic human error. And that mistake had just exposed a criminal conspiracy that reached across multiple states and threatened the foundation of American entrepreneurship. The revelations kept coming like waves, each one more devastating than the last. Agent Morrison received another call and stepped away from the podium, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. When he returned, his expression was grim. Your Honor, we have a developing situation. David Brennan just attempted to access the primary account at First National Bank, the one he's been using as the central hub for the stolen funds. The attempt was made from an internet cafe in Tijuana, Mexico, approximately 40 minutes ago. Judge Chen leaned forward. Was he successful? No, ma'am. We had the account frozen yesterday as part of the federal investigation. But the timing suggests he's panicking. Our intelligence indicates he's been monitoring court proceedings remotely, possibly through an accomplice still in the Los Angeles area. The thought that Brennan might be watching this entire courtroom drama unfold in real time made my skin crawl. Somewhere across the border, he was probably calculating his next move while I sat here learning the true scope of how thoroughly my life had been dissected and weaponized. Agent Morrison pulled up another document. We also intercepted a phone call between Brennan and an unknown associate 30 minutes ago. Partial transcript reads, the Williams situation has gone completely sideways. Activate the insurance protocols for all active cases immediately. Insurance protocols? Janet asked, though something in her tone suggested she already suspected what that meant. Based on previous patterns, we believe it refers to evidence destruction. Within the next few hours, Brennan's remaining operatives are likely going to attempt to eliminate any physical or digital evidence that could tie them to the conspiracy. I felt a chill run down my spine. Our office servers. Marcus had administrative access to everything, employee records, client databases, backup systems. Janet was already dialing. Sarah's right. If they're destroying evidence, Cloud Vault's data could be their first target. She pressed the phone to her ear. Jennifer. This is Janet Morrison, Cloud Vault's attorney. I need you to shut down all servers immediately and don't let anyone into the building. What do you mean someone's already there? My heart stopped. Jennifer was our customer service manager, usually the first one in the office every morning. If someone was already at Cloud Vault, it meant Brennan's people had moved faster than anyone anticipated. Who's in the building? Janet demanded, switching to speakerphone so we could all hear. Jennifer's voice was shaky. 2 men in suits showed up about an hour ago with some kind of court order. They said they were from your law firm and needed to secure financial documents for the case. They've been in Marcus's office since I got here. Agent Morrison was already gesturing to the FBI agents in the back of the courtroom. Ms. Patterson, this is Agent Morrison with the FBI. Those men are not authorized to be in your building. I need you to leave immediately and call 911. I can't leave, Jennifer replied, her voice rising in panic. They said if I tried to contact anyone, there could be legal consequences for interfering with a federal investigation. They showed me official-looking paperwork. Of course they had fake federal credentials. Brennan's operation had been sophisticated enough to fool accountants, lawyers, and bank officials for months. Terrorizing a customer service manager would have been trivial. Jennifer, listen carefully, I said, leaning toward Janet's phone. Those men are criminals. Get out of the building right now and don't worry about any paperwork they showed you. But Sarah, they specifically mentioned you by name. They said you were under federal investigation and that Cloud Vault's records were being seized as evidence. Agent Morrison took control of the call. Ma'am, this is a federal agent speaking. You are not in legal jeopardy, but you are potentially in physical danger. Leave the building immediately. Okay, I'm heading for the exit now, Jennifer whispered. Oh God, they heard me talking. One of them is coming toward the front desk. The phone went dead. Judge Chen immediately called for a 15-minute emergency recess and ordered federal marshals to secure the courthouse. Agent Morrison was coordinating with local FBI units to respond to Cloud Vault's offices, but I could see the concern in his expression. Brennan's network was moving faster than law enforcement could respond. How many other companies are being hit right now? I asked Janet as chaos erupted around us. Agent Morrison thinks at least 6, maybe more. They're targeting every business that was part of Brennan's client portfolio with Brennan and Associates. She paused, checking her phone for updates from the other legal teams. Sarah, there's something else. The Orange County case, Databridge Solutions, their defendant never showed up to court this morning. My blood ran cold. What do you mean didn't show up? Grace Kim was supposed to be in court 3 hours ago defending herself against embezzlement charges filed by her business partner. Her attorney says she never arrived, and she's not answering her phone. Another victim, somewhere out there, possibly facing the same evidence destruction tactics that were happening at Cloud Vault right now. I thought about Thomas Peterson, the landscaping business owner who'd been driven to suicide after Brennan's people destroyed his records. Was Grace Kim the next target for Brennan's insurance protocols? Agent Morrison returned with an update that confirmed my worst fears. Local units are en route to Cloud Vault, but the suspects fled before they arrived. They took several computer hard drives and a box of physical documents. Your employee Jennifer Patterson is safe, she made it out of the building and is providing a description of the suspects. Everything Marcus and I had built together, 3 years of client relationships, proprietary software code, employee records, could be gone. Even if we recovered the stolen money, Cloud Vault might not survive having its operational foundation ripped away. Furthermore, Agent Morrison continued, we just received word that Grace Kim from Databridge Solutions has been found safe, but her business offices were burglarized sometime between midnight and 6 a.m. this morning. Same pattern, servers and financial records specifically targeted. The coordination was terrifying. While I'd been preparing for what I thought was a simple civil lawsuit, Brennan's criminal network had been executing a multi-state evidence destruction campaign designed to eliminate any trace of their systematic fraud. But as I sat there watching FBI agents coordinate a response that spanned 4 states and involved dozens of victims, I realized that Marcus's accidental confession had done more than just save my reputation. It had potentially saved lives. The FBI agents were setting up what looked like a mobile command center in the courthouse hallway when Agent Morrison received another call that made his face go ashen. He spoke in rapid, clipped sentences before hanging up and approaching our table. Ms. Chen, we have a significant development. Grace Kim from Databridge Solutions isn't just safe, she's here in Los Angeles. Her attorney drove her down this morning after they realized the pattern similarities between your cases. I looked up, confused. Here. At this courthouse. She's in the building right now, along with attorneys representing the other victims from San Diego and Silicon Valley. They want to coordinate testimony and compare evidence. Agent Morrison paused, checking his notes. More importantly, Ms. Kim brought something that changes everything we thought we knew about Brennan's operation. Janet leaned forward. What kind of something? A recording device. Apparently, Grace Kim had been suspicious of her business partner for weeks and started secretly recording their conversations. She captured him admitting not just to the embezzlement, but to something much bigger. Agent Morrison gestured toward the courtroom doors, where I could see a small Asian woman in a navy business suit speaking intensely with 2 other people I didn't recognize. MS. Kim, would you join us please? Grace Kim approached our table with the kind of focused energy that reminded me of myself during Cloud Vault's early days, driven, intelligent, and probably running on pure adrenaline. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 26, with the slightly rumpled appearance of someone who'd been awake for 36 hours straight. Sarah Chen. She extended her hand. Grace Kim, Databridge Solutions. I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances, but I think what I recorded might help both of us. She pulled out a small digital recorder and set it on the table. This conversation happened 3 days ago, the same day your partner was apparently finalizing his legal strategy. My partner, David Thompson, thought I was at a client meeting, but I came back early and heard him on the phone in his office. Agent Morrison nodded for her to proceed. Grace pressed play, and David Thompson's voice filled our small circle with crystal clarity. Brennan, the timeline's too aggressive. Grace is asking questions about the Riverside Holdings payment, and if she digs any deeper into the quarterly reports, she's going to figure out what we've been doing. Brennan's response made my stomach lurch. The Los Angeles operation is proceeding exactly as planned. Williams will present the fabricated evidence Friday morning, and by afternoon, Sarah Chen will be facing federal charges. Once she's discredited, Marcus takes full control of Cloud Vault and we have our West Coast hub. But what if something goes wrong with the Williams case? Nothing will go wrong. I've been managing Marcus Williams for 8 months. He's desperate, he's in debt up to his eyeballs from those crypto losses, and most importantly, he's completely dependent on me to clean up his mess. He'll do exactly what I tell him to do. Grace stopped the recording and looked at me with something that might have been sympathy. There's more. About 20 minutes of Brennan explaining how the 4 Friday lawsuits were designed to create maximum chaos while he transferred the accumulated funds to offshore accounts. The casual way Brennan had discussed destroying my life was almost worse than learning about the financial theft. To him, I wasn't a person, I was just an obstacle to be eliminated as efficiently as possible. Furthermore, Grace continued, Brennan mentioned something called the Seattle expansion. Apparently, Marcus wasn't just supposed to take control of Cloud Vault, he was being groomed to recruit operatives in Washington state using your company as a legitimate front. Agent Morrison was taking detailed notes. Ms. Kim, did Brennan mention specific targets in Seattle? 3 companies by name, Emerald Analytics, Pacific Ventures, and Northwest Solutions. All of them in the $5 to $10 million revenue range. Grace's expression hardened. Brennan said Cloud Vault's reputation in the industry would make it easy to approach their founders as potential partners or investors. The scope kept expanding exponentially. Brennan hadn't just been planning to steal our money, he'd been planning to use our legitimate business relationships to spread his fraud network throughout the Pacific Northwest. There's something else on the recording, Grace said quietly. About what happens to business owners who don't cooperate with the frame-up strategy. She fast-forwarded through several minutes of conversation and stopped at another exchange that made the temperature in the room seem to drop 10 degrees. What about the Peterson situation? That got messy. Peterson was an unfortunate necessity. Sometimes people need additional motivation to accept their circumstances. The important thing is that his case never went to trial, and his records were thoroughly sanitized. The casual reference to Thomas Peterson's death, the landscaping business owner who'd supposedly committed suicide after being destroyed by Brennan's fraud ring, suggested something far more sinister than I'd imagined. Agent Morrison was already on his phone, probably requesting Peterson's case be reopened as a potential homicide investigation. As Grace Kim's recording continued playing, revealing layer after layer of Brennan's criminal empire, I realized that Marcus's accidental USB drive mistake hadn't just saved my reputation. It had potentially prevented murders. The recording continued, and Brennan's voice filled the silence with chilling precision. The beauty of the Friday coordination is psychological warfare. For simultaneous legal attacks create a media narrative about widespread startup fraud. By Monday, every venture capital firm in California will be questioning their due diligence processes. Grace fast-forwarded to another section. This part specifically mentions you, Sarah. The Chin woman has been problematic from the beginning. Williams reports she's been asking questions about client payment timing and quarterly revenue recognition. More sophisticated than the typical targets. Brennan's associate, I assumed it was Grace's partner Thompson, responded, what if she lawyers up before Williams can present the fabricated evidence? She already has legal representation, but we've accounted for that. Janet Morrison is competent but small scale. She won't recognize the federal conspiracy patterns until it's too late. By the time Morrison realizes what she's dealing with, Chin will be facing criminal charges and Williams will have control of Cloud Vault's assets. I felt sick hearing my attorney analyze like a chess piece in Brennan's strategy. Janet had been working around the clock to defend me, never realizing she was fighting a criminal enterprise that had been planning my destruction for months. Agent Morrison leaned forward. Ms. Kim, how much more of this conversation do you have? Another 18 minutes. But there's one section you need to hear immediately. Grace's hands were shaking as she navigated to a specific timestamp. This is about something called Phoenix Protocol. The voices resumed, what's the timeline for Phoenix implementation? Phase 1 activates if any of the Friday cases encounter unexpected resistance. Evidence destruction, asset liquidation, and operative extraction within 72 hours. Phase 2 involves permanent relocating of key personnel to our Costa Rica facility. And if local law enforcement gets involved before we can extract. That's what Phoenix Phase 3 addresses. Complete operational shutdown, facility sanitization, and elimination of potential witnesses who could compromise the international components. Agent Morrison stood up abruptly, his phone already in hand. Excuse me, I need to coordinate immediate protective custody for all identified witnesses. As he stepped away to make urgent calls, Grace and I sat in stunned silence. Elimination of potential witnesses. Brennan wasn't just running a fraud ring, he was operating what sounded like an organized crime syndicate with contingency plans for murder. Grace, I said quietly, how did you know to start recording Thompson's conversations? My background is computer forensics. Before DataBridge, I worked for a cybersecurity firm that investigated financial crimes. She managed a bitter smile. When our quarterly report started showing discrepancies I couldn't explain, my training kicked in. I started documenting everything, phone calls, email timestamps, even photographing documents Thompson thought he'd hidden. That explained why she'd been more prepared than the other victims. Grace had professional experience recognizing the warning signs of systematic fraud. There's something else, she continued, pulling out a manila folder thick with documents. I've been tracking the money flows between Brennan's operation and at least 12 other companies across California. The pattern suggests they've been active for almost 3 years, not the 18 months the FBI initially estimated. 3 years. That meant Brennan had been perfecting his systematic destruction of small businesses since around the time Marcus and I had founded Cloud Vault. We'd been building our dream while somewhere in the background, a criminal enterprise was developing the tools to destroy companies exactly like ours. Furthermore, Grace said, I think I know where Brennan is hiding the accumulated funds. The recording mentions Costa Rica facility and international components, but my analysis of the banking pattern suggests the money never left California. Agent Morrison returned with news that confirmed our worst fears. Protective details are being arranged for all identified witnesses, but we have a problem. David Thompson, Grace's business partner, disappeared from his Orange County office 2 hours ago. Security footage shows him loading boxes into a rental truck. He's running, Grace said matter-of-factly. Thompson knows I've been documenting his activities. Question is whether he's trying to warn Brennan or just save himself. Based on the Phoenix Protocol timeline, Agent Morrison replied grimly, we have to assume both. The courthouse's fire alarm started blaring just as Agent Morrison finished coordinating protective custody arrangements. At first, I thought it was coincidence, old building, faulty wiring. But when I saw the expression on his face as he checked his phone, I knew we were dealing with something much worse. Building evacuation is not a drill, he announced, already moving toward Grace and me. Phoenix Protocol just went active. Janet grabbed my arm as federal agents began herding everyone toward the exits. What does that mean exactly? It means Brennan's people are trying to eliminate evidence and witnesses simultaneously, Agent Morrison replied, scanning the hallway for threats. The fire alarm is probably a diversion while they access court records or attempt to extract remaining operatives. As we moved through the crowded courthouse corridor, Grace leaned close to me. Sarah, there's something else on my recording that I didn't mention. Thompson talked about someone called the Los Angeles Contact who's been feeding Brennan information from inside the court system. My blood went cold. Someone here. In this building? According to the conversation, this person has been monitoring your case since Marcus first filed the lawsuit. They've been reporting on your legal strategy, Janet's preparation methods, even which witnesses you plan to call. The implications were staggering. Every move we'd made, every piece of evidence we'd gathered, had potentially been compromised from the beginning. Brennan hadn't just been running a financial fraud scheme, he'd been operating a sophisticated intelligence network with sources throughout the legal system. Agent Morrison's radio crackled with urgent updates as we reached the main exit. All units, be advised. Simultaneous fire alarms have been triggered at courthouses in San Diego, Orange County, and San Jose. This is coordinated disruption, not random incidents. For courthouses, for ongoing cases, all experiencing emergencies at the same time. Brennan's Phoenix Protocol wasn't just about destroying evidence, it was about creating chaos across multiple jurisdictions to overwhelm law enforcement response. Outside the courthouse, I watched federal agents set up a perimeter while fire departments responded to what they didn't yet realize was a coordinated attack. Somewhere in that controlled chaos, Brennan's remaining operatives were probably executing the final phases of their evidence destruction campaign. Agent Morrison, Grace called out, still clutching her manila folder of financial evidence. The recording mentioned specific timing. Phoenix Phase 1 was supposed to last exactly 90 minutes, enough time to clear physical evidence and extract key personnel before law enforcement could coordinate an effective response. He checked his watch. That gives us about 45 minutes before they move to Phase 2. Phase 2, according to Grace's recording, involved permanent relocation of key personnel to Costa Rica. If Brennan's remaining operatives successfully extracted from California, we might never recover the stolen funds or get justice for victims like Thomas Peterson. Janet was coordinating with the other attorneys via phone, trying to maintain legal momentum despite the orchestrated chaos. The San Diego team managed to get their evidence submitted to federal court before the evacuation, she reported. But Orange County and San Jose are dealing with complete facility lockdowns. As I stood there watching smoke, real or artificial, I couldn't tell, pour from the courthouse windows, I realized that Marcus's spectacular courtroom failure had triggered something much larger than anyone had anticipated. His accidentally incriminating USB drive hadn't just exposed a fraud ring, it had forced a criminal enterprise to activate emergency protocols that were now threatening witnesses across 4 counties. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number: stop cooperating with federal investigation or CloudVault's remaining employees will face consequences. You have 24 hours to reconsider your testimony. I showed the message to Agent Morrison, whose expression grew darker. Ms. Chen, how many people knew you'd be testifying today? The answer hit me like a physical blow. Besides my legal team and the FBI, only one group had detailed knowledge of my cooperation with the federal investigation, CloudVault's 8 employees, who I'd briefed yesterday about the potential business disruption. Someone on my own team had been compromising our security from the inside. The FBI's temporary command post had been set up in the courthouse parking garage, and Agent Morrison was coordinating what looked like a small war effort. Grace Kim sat beside me, her manila folder of evidence spread across a folding table while federal agents photographed every document. Janet was on her 3rd phone call with prosecutors, trying to salvage legal proceedings from 4 different jurisdictions. Ms. Chen, Agent Morrison said, returning from a huddle with other agents, we've identified your security leak. It wasn't one of your employees. I looked up from Grace's financial records. What do you mean? The text threat you received came from a burner phone registered to Rebecca Santos, a paralegal at Rodriguez and Associates. He paused, letting that sink in. Marcus's law firm has been compromised from the beginning. Rodriguez and Associates. Marcus's expensive attorney who'd been so confident presenting that USB drive had apparently been harboring a Brennan operative in his own office. Rebecca Santos had probably been feeding information to the criminal network while helping prepare Marcus's legal strategy. Furthermore, Agent Morrison continued, Santos accessed your court file 17 times over the past 2 weeks, including yesterday when your witness list was finalized. Every piece of legal strategy Rodriguez developed was immediately passed to Brennan's people. Grace looked up from the document she'd been reviewing. That explains how Thompson knew exactly which financial records to target when they burglarized my office. They had inside information about what evidence we'd be presenting. The coordination was becoming clearer. Brennan hadn't just been running a fraud ring, he'd been operating a sophisticated intelligence network that included corrupt accountants, compromised law firm staff, and informants inside major corporations. The scope was far beyond anything local law enforcement could have detected. Agent Morrison, Janet called out, hanging up from her latest call, the Orange County DA wants to coordinate RICO charges across all affected jurisdictions. They're talking about federal racketeering prosecution with potential 30-year sentences. 30 years. I thought about Marcus sitting in federal custody, probably still believing he could negotiate his way out of this nightmare. He'd gone from embezzling $23,000 to facing life in prison as part of an organized crime syndicate. There's something else, Grace said, pointing to a specific transaction in her financial analysis. I've been tracking the money flows, and I found something interesting. The Cayman Islands account everyone's been focused on. It's a decoy. Agent Morrison leaned over the table. What do you mean, decoy? The real money isn't offshore. Look at this pattern. Grace spread out 3 bank statements showing a complex web of transfers. Every large theft from victim companies gets moved to the Cayman account for exactly 72 hours, then transferred back to a domestic account at Pacific Trust Bank in Beverly Hills. She was right. The numbers were clear once you knew what to look for. The offshore account was just a way station designed to make the money appear untraceable while it was actually being held less than 20 miles from downtown Los Angeles. The Pacific Trust account is registered to something called Golden State Consulting Services, Grace continued. But when I ran the corporate registration, guess who the listed managing partner is? Agent Morrison's expression grew grim. Please tell me it's not who I think it is. David Brennan's ex-wife, Linda Brennan. She's been living in Manhattan Beach for the past 2 years, probably managing the entire West Coast money laundering operation while David played the role of fugitive accountant. The revelation hit me like a freight train. Brennan hadn't been running his criminal empire from Mexico, he'd been operating from one of the most expensive beach communities in Southern California, probably within driving distance of every business he destroyed. Linda Brennan owns a $2.8 million house in Manhattan Beach, drives a Tesla Model S, and according to public records, has no visible means of income, Grace said, pulling up property records on her laptop. But Pacific Trust Bank shows regular deposits totaling over $4 million in the past 18 months. Agent Morrison was already coordinating with local FBI units. If Linda Brennan is the actual money manager, then David's supposed flight to Mexico was misdirection. The entire operation might still be active in Los Angeles County. As federal agents prepared to raid Linda Brennan's Manhattan Beach house, I realized that Marcus's accidental USB drive hadn't just exposed a fraud ring, it had revealed a criminal enterprise so sophisticated that they'd fooled the FBI into chasing ghosts while the real operation continued from a beachfront mansion 20 minutes away. But the most disturbing thought was simpler. If Linda Brennan had been living openly in Manhattan Beach for 2 years, managing millions in stolen funds, what other criminal operations were hiding in plain sight throughout Southern California's business community? The answer to that question was about to reshape everything we thought we knew about organized crime in the modern economy. The raid on Linda Brennan's Manhattan Beach house happened at 6:47 a.m. the next morning, and I was there to witness it alongside Agent Morrison and Grace Kim. What we found exceeded every expectation. Linda Brennan's $2.8 million beachfront property wasn't just a money laundering operation, it was the nerve center for a criminal empire that stretched across 12 states. The FBI discovered servers containing financial records for over 200 compromised businesses, detailed psychological profiles of targeted entrepreneurs, and most shocking of all, a conference room with a whiteboard mapping out Phase 4, national expansion. Jesus Christ, Agent Morrison muttered as we walked through what looked like a legitimate consulting firm's headquarters. They were planning to franchise this operation to every major metropolitan area in the country. Linda Brennan, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s wearing designer yoga clothes, was arrested while sipping coffee on her ocean view balcony. Her only comment before being handcuffed was, "You have no idea how many people this will hurt when it all comes out." She was right, but not in the way she intended. The seized computers contained evidence linking Brennan's network to corruption inside 17 major accounting firms, 11 law offices, and 6 venture capital groups across California alone. The systematic infiltration of the business ecosystem was staggering. They'd essentially created a shadow economy designed to identify and destroy successful small businesses. But the most satisfying moment came when Agent Morrison opened Linda Brennan's personal safe. Inside, along with $340,000 in cash, was a detailed ledger titled Active Targets 2024 to 2025. Cloud Vault was listed on page 3 with a note, Williams' operation failed. Target eliminated through legal exposure. Loss, $4.2 million projected revenue. Brennan's network had written us off as a failure after Marcus's courtroom disaster. They had no idea that his spectacular incompetence had given us everything we needed to bring down their entire operation. Sarah, Grace called from across the room, you need to see this. She was holding a thick folder labeled Peterson, Thomas, Riverside Landscaping, Closure Protocol. The Peterson file contained photographs of his office after the burglary, copies of the fabricated documents used to destroy his business, and most damning of all, a detailed timeline showing how they'd systematically isolated him from potential support networks before his death. While the file didn't explicitly admit to murder, the calculated psychological warfare was clear evidence of criminal responsibility. Agent Morrison closed the file with visible disgust. Linda Brennan just became the star witness in a federal RICO case. She's looking at life in prison unless she cooperates fully. The final count was staggering. $47.3 million recovered from various accounts, 847 victims across 14 states, and federal charges filed against 37 individuals including Marcus, Rebecca Santos the paralegal, Richard Walsh from TechCorp, and David Thompson who'd been arrested at LAX trying to board a flight to Costa Rica. Marcus ultimately received a 12-year sentence after cooperating with federal prosecutors. His testimony led to the recovery of an additional $8.7 million and helped convict Linda Brennan on racketeering charges. The last time I saw him was during his sentencing hearing, where he looked across the courtroom and mouthed, "I'm sorry," before being led away in shackles. Cloud Vault not only survived but thrived. The recovered funds, combined with the eventual TechCorp acquisition that proceeded once our legal troubles cleared, meant our 8 employees received substantial bonuses instead of unemployment notices. We've since grown to 32 employees and annual revenue of $12.4 million. The most ironic twist. Marcus's accidentally incriminating USB drive became Exhibit A in what prosecutors called the largest small business fraud conspiracy in U.S. history. His attempt to destroy me with fabricated evidence instead exposed a criminal empire and saved hundreds of entrepreneurs from financial ruin. Sometimes the best revenge is just giving someone enough rope to hang themselves. Marcus provided the rope, tied the knot, and kicked away the chair all by himself. I couldn't have planned it better if I tried.